I want to make it very clear that there's zero. If you have no sports background and you want to try something, or geez, I don't know, it could be anything. Just because you don't have a background in it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try it. And they're also, just because you don't have a background in something doesn't mean that at whatever age that you're at, middle age, old age, that you couldn't be wildly successful.
That is Susanne Vanzijl this week on the Do It For Yourself podcast. Everybody, how's it going? Just want to take a minute to say happy Labor Day here in the States. Today is Monday, the first Monday in September, which means it is Labor Day. Hopefully, if you are lucky enough, you had the day off. You could enjoy it with some family. It is the official end of summer. This is it. No more white pants, no more white shorts, no more going down to the beach for most people. So I hope that you are taking this time to enjoy, spend it with some family, and reflect on your summer. This week, my guest is Susanne Vanzijl. And Susanne and I have known each other for quite some time. Susanne actually used to swim at the same pool as me. And so I became friendly with Susanne. I saw that she was, training for some triathlons. So we became friends and we kind of kept up. Unfortunately, Susanne has moved down to Baltimore County, so she's not as close as she used to be. I don't see her at the pool anymore. But we had a chance to reconnect at her pool, at her beautiful home, and kind of go through her story about how she got into triathlon and how she trained for and qualified for Kona twice from her home. So Susanne was training from her home before Lionel Sanders came out and kind of said, hey, I'm doing all my training at home. Susanne was the first person that I knew who was doing all of her rides inside, a lot of her runs inside. And actually, you'll hear at one point in time when she wanted to run outside, she would run around her block, which was a quarter of a mile, and she would just run repeats around her quarter-mile block. I think she made it up to a 10-mile run on this quarter. I mean, imagine running on 10 miles on a quarter-mile track. So Suzanne's story is just one of absolute perseverance and dedication to this sport, to her goals, and to getting better, all while taking care of her two sons and trying to help them as much as she possibly can. So I am very excited to share this interview with you, with Susanne. She is an absolutely amazing person, and I think that you are really, really going to enjoy this interview. So without further ado, here is my interview with Susanne. But before we get too wrapped up, so I'm here with Susanne, and Susanne's the Autism Ninja, and she is absolutely amazing. And we used to share a pool together at the Hack.
Yes.
And so that's how we became friendly. You have since moved, so you're not up close to the Hack anymore.
Yes.
But we've kept in touch. We've shared the race course multiple times. I do remember you yelling at me at Wildwood last year to pick it up on the run, which I knew that I was not going to be able to keep up with you on the 5K run. But it was great to get to share the course with you. And so I came down today because I want you to share your story of getting into triathlon, qualifying for Kona twice.
Okay.
And some of the things that you went through and some of the training that you did while you were doing both of those races, and not just the Kona race, but obviously your Ironman before that as well. So thank you for having me down here to your beautiful home. We're hanging out by the pool, which is awesome. And I'm really excited for you to share your story.
This is exciting. It's kind of strange, and it's certainly a luxury to sit and talk about yourself. So, no, I'm excited, and I found, that actually taking the opportunity to stop and talk about the stuff that you've been through is makes you realize stuff. It's kind of cool. So it's certainly a luxury.
And you're kind of no stranger to this, being as your last Ironman Kona appearance, you had not somebody just following you around with a microphone, but you had a full-blown crew that was following you around. So you may have done this a little bit.
Yeah. So I guess it was 2017. I did something called Quest for Kona. It was a contest, actually, that Ironman had put on where they selected 10 of us to be followed in training and racing on trying to qualify for the World Championship. And, I signed up for it on a lark and got selected. And in the process met just a bunch of amazing people and had truly a life-changing experience. And also an opportunity because, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but before the first time I qualified for the World Championship and then tried to race it, I didn't finish. So Quest for Kona was this incredible opportunity to try again and to have this other motivation, like, geez, if I screw this up or if I don't try real hard, they're going to have it on camera. So it's a little bit of an extra motivator. And it worked really well.
Do you think that you would have gone, do you think you would have tried to go a second time if it weren't for Quest for Kona?
Absolutely. No doubt.
You wanted a second chance. You wanted a redemption. You wanted to...
It would have been unacceptable to let that hang like that. Yeah.
Right.
No. I definitely would have tried again. I don't know that I would have gone that year, because my life continues to become challenging. I have 2 boys, and my youngest is mid-spectrum autistic, and he is hard. He's just hard. His behaviors change, and so to be able to keep up a training regimen that's appropriate to try and qualify is super duper extra hard. So,
and we'll definitely get a chance to talk about that and your quarter mile repeats that you used to do around the block, and
just gross.
Riding your, because I'm assuming that a lot of your rides were inside and
all of them.
So, yeah.
I think there were 3 that were outside with a friend, and then the rest of them were on the trainer. And
you were like almost Lionel Sanders before Lionel Sanders came out and started really making this a big deal about, I train 99% inside.
I am not a huge girl that is interested in being sponsored, but the one thing that when I think he's sponsored by Zwift, and I was like, you know what? That's not fair. I'm like, I should be sponsored. Now it's only $9 a month or something, but God knows it was worth it because I Zwifted. There was a moment of pride when you would sit there and look at the little screen and they'd have all of the numbers next to the people's names, and then there's me with 75 miles next to my name.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. I have a funny story from Zwift. Do you know anything about Wattage? I think it's Wattage Cottage, and it's this chick, and she's on Instagram, and she
I know the name, but yeah.
Okay, so she was on Zwift one day, and I didn't realize it at the time, but she's on Zwift and she's doing this ride, and she goes smoking past me on this ride.
Right.
I'm like, holy smell! And then I look at the thing, and it was I think it was somewhere in the 90s, 90 miles.
Yeah.
So then, I kid you not, 2-3 minutes later, I get this notification on my phone. Wattage Cottage is doing an Instagram live video.
Right.
So I open it up, and here's homegirl. She's at an expo with her kicker doing a 100-mile inside ride at a tent, and I just got smoked by her.
I love that. That's fantastic.
This is insane. So let's go back a little bit, and I want to hear, how you got into this sport in some detail because you did not come from an athletic background.
Zero. Yeah.
We do share one thing in common. We are both ex-smokers, and so that was, like it's kind of funny to look back on now. And so talk to me a little bit about how you got into this sport, because you came into it on the running side first.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, no, I did no sports in high school. No sports. I think I tried lacrosse for one season and I sucked at it. I'm a terrible team sport person. No running, no swimming, no high school swimming, none of that. And went to art school for my undergraduate, and then got my master's in painting, and then just discovered myself in my early 30s and just not happy with trying to sort of recollect my body a little bit and control my weight, and started going to the gym and started exploring running, and I thought I would hate it. And strangely, I love it. I love giving a very finite challenge to yourself and then chasing it each time you get back on the treadmill or go back out on the trail. So I guess I started running when I was like 31, 32, before the birth of my first child. And after he was born, I trained for a marathon, and I did okay. I didn't really have a lot of guidance. I had gone to the local running store, and the guy, who was incredibly nice down here, he wrote down a long run schedule on the back of like a handout, and I put it on my refrigerator. And so I'd run 3, 4, 5, 6 miles during the week, and then whatever it said on the weekend. And that's what I did. And I loved it. I had a treadmill in my basement, so I'd run while my son was asleep. And anyway, running is just addictive, and it's gives you a sense of accomplishment and certainly triathlon does as well. It just gives you a sense of accomplishment that is so easy to achieve. It's just pure effort, and then when you're done, you're like, wow, look what I did. So no athletic background, started in running in my 30s, and then triathlon. Running after a while, I ran for a bunch of years and did marathons, and predictably became obsessed with qualifying for Boston.
Right. I was going to ask you that. And did you go? Have you been?
I did. Interestingly, I was broken at the time, so I went with my my running bestie. And ran with her. I ran to mile 16. Okay. And I was training for Eagleman that year. I had already gone over to the dark side of triathlon.
Okay.
And so I ran to mile 16 and then took what do they call the subway in Boston?
I don't know.
I forget.
I've never been. My brother's a huge Boston fan. He would probably know what they call it. But yeah, I've never been to Boston, so I don't know what they call it.
I took the train to the finish line and met her. And so I've never finished Boston. I've run 16 miles of it. But that was my first big goal.
Was to get to Boston.
Yeah, it took me a few tries, and mostly what it took was I had to drop some weight. I didn't realize that, so. But after qualifying for Boston, you chase running PRs and you get a little bit bored and you want something more complex and interesting. And I think, like everybody else in the whole world, I had seen that crazy Ironman special. I think that was
on NBC. Yeah,
that's what sucked me in. Right.
So interestingly enough, because a lot of people who I've talked to that come from running, come over to triathlon because they're busted, and whoever, whatever, it's their knee doctor, their ankle, whatever it is, the doctor says, okay, and no running for 3 months. You can swim and you can bike. And then people start swimming and they start cycling, and they're like, oh, wait a minute. So I can put these 3 things together and I can challenge myself even a little bit more. And that's how they get into it. So that was not the case for you.
No, I think that actually it was interesting. So I guess at that point I had already run like 2 marathons. I had 2 small children, so both boys were born. And I was going to a local Y, and there were some running people there. And there was also a girl that I knew who was a swimmer. She had been, past tense. And we were trying to figure out, like, what do you do? What else can you do? Running is getting boring. And she's like, oh. And she mentioned that she had been a swimmer. And I'd always been fascinated by swimming. Never swam. I was a lifeguard. But, like, and I could swim just fine. And so I was like, oh, I want you to show me how to really swim. And that was how the swimming started. And then I guess because of where I was geographically, there were a few local races. So, all the piranha races were pretty close by.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then that's how I thought, well, wouldn't it be wild, to just try a triathlon? Because nobody's doing that. That would be really hard. So, yeah, my husband bought me the first bike was this behemoth off of eBay. It was a Skitante, and it weighed like 45 pounds. They put it on oh my God. And then I went to the bike store before my first try, and the guy was like, dude, your tires are like 45 PSI. And I was like, what's that? And because I would have been anyway, he inflated them up for my first race, and I'm on this like cobbled together Frankenstein bike. Yeah.
And what race was it? Do you remember?
It was Devilman.
Okay.
Devilman. What was your first race?
My first race was the Atlantic City International.
Oh,
they do a sprint in International, and so we picked that one because it was later in the season, which I was ready to go in like July, and this race was September. And so we picked it because it was a little bit later in the season, and we were back and forth between that one and I want to say Cape Henlopen. And I don't know if they even do that one anymore, but Cape Henlopen was an ocean swim.
Yeah.
And Atlantic City is in the Back Bay.
Yeah.
And so, not that I'm not a nervous swimmer by any means, but also for my first race, I was like, why don't we go with the Back Bay swim over the ocean swim? And I'm pretty sure, oddly enough, the swim was actually canceled in Cape Henlopen that year because it was like a late September, early October.
Henlopen is usually freezing and current assisted. Like they can almost, the one time I did it, it's like they throw you in the water and then it'll just pull you all the way down and then you jump back out again.
Okay. If they can put you in the water. I was
going to say, yeah.
Because I think that was like, they've had the same issue as what they've had with Ironman Maryland the last couple years, is that the conditions just get crazy that
time of year.
Yeah. Well, it's hurricane season and you're on the coast.
Yeah.
So late September, early October, it's tough. So yes, that was, long story long, my first one was Atlantic City. And it's funny because I say this all the time. I think if I went somewhere else and I did a different race and I had a different experience, I don't know that I would have stuck with the sport versus the experience that I had with Delmo.
Interesting.
I mean, he makes sure that all of the I's are dotted, all of the T's are crossed, and everything. It's all about the athletes for that, not only just that day, but that weekend. And I've heard mixed things, and I've seen some other things occur from different race directors, and I think if I had that experience that I witnessed, I would have been like, oh man, this sucks.
Well, it's nice to know that things are predictable and they're going to be held together. I have heard, yes. There have definitely been races where you're like, you're kidding me. You guys are flying by the seat of your pants. Like, what are you doing?
Oh, and like water stops are being like broken down and pulled in when there's still people on the court. Yeah. So, I'm not here to name names or anything.
Yeah.
I just think that, had I gone and had that as my first experience, the outcome probably would have been significantly different.
Yeah.
And so now that's why I'm more than happy to support Delmo. And like, like we were saying, I'm going to go and volunteer at Ironman Atlantic City. And I'm actually really excited, weirdly, because I'm going to be a wetsuit stripper. So I feel like that's going to be, aside from working the finish line, I think that's going to be the second most fun job you could possibly have.
Have you volunteered at an Ironman yet?
I haven't volunteered in Ironman. I volunteered at other races. I just
Okay.
haven't volunteered at Ironman yet.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm hoping to sneak down and go to Maryland in a little bit and go. And what do? The last time I did it, I've it's actually kind of horrifying. Whoa. I went down to Florida one year because, for a while you couldn't get into the races and you had to volunteer to get in. So I flew down to Florida to volunteer the first year so I could get guaranteed entry. And I stood there in the blasty sun. I'm going to sound like a princess for 5 hours in T2. So people would come blasting in, throw their bikes at people, and they'd start screaming at you their numbers, and you had to give them their bags so they could change into stuff for the run. And in the beginning, it was okay, but I hadn't really seen an Ironman at that point, and to watch the people at the end come in off their bikes, and they're not going to make the cutoff, and they look, woof. It was very eye-opening, and it told me a lot about what I was getting myself into before I had even gone through one. So
was your first 70.3, your first half was Eagleman?
Yes.
Oh.
I love Eagleman. I love it.
Well, that's where you and I differ, and we were talking about this earlier. You love the heat, and you do well in the heat.
Yes.
I hate the heat. And I don't know. I mean, I've done okay. I definitely don't have. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that because I think my Olympic distance PR was in the heat of Omaha. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's just like maybe it's just a mental thing. Maybe I think I don't do well in the heat, but you love the heat.
Yes. Well, yeah. So my first half was Eagleman. And you're going to ask me a hard question, say what year was it? And I'm going to say, I don't remember. It might be like 2011, 2012, something like that. Was that it? I've done Eagleman 3 times. And then every year I did it with the intent or the hope of qualifying, because at that point they had Kona slots.
Yes.
And the year they took the Kona slots away, I literally cried. I cried because I realized I was going to have to step up and do a full in order to achieve my dream of qualifying for Kona. So I started out in hot races, and Eagleman was it. I loved the cycle of training for that damn race every year, and then each time I did it, I was lucky enough to qualify for Worlds from it.
For 70.3 World.
Yeah, and so then I would, race Hot Eagleman, and then the two years I did Hot Vegas, so Worlds was in Las Vegas, so it worked out really well. And actually, in a lot of ways, Las Vegas was ever so slightly less scary. It's that whole heat versus humidity thing.
Yes.
Because it was so dry in Vegas, and it would actually be cold in the morning, but then by 1 o'clock it was 105 or something, and you were like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die." So, but I think the half distance is very civilized distance. I love it. You can still go fast. I didn't realize when I stepped up to Ironman that by the time you get to Ironman, except for maybe super cool people. It's not so much racing as surviving and grinding through it, especially on the run. I very much I build through each race so that my swim is okay, and then my bike is a little bit stronger, and then I really push through on the run, and I think I usually catch the most people on the run. And so in order to when you do a full Ironman, it's a little discouraging when you realize that you're not so much racing, you're doing power trotting. So
I mean, I've seen your splits. I wouldn't necessarily call it
you
power
know what I
trotting,
mean. It's like you're not.
Yeah. It's not an open marathon.
No,
that you could probably.
But it's not even. It's sort of like it's like a long run. You're at long run pace.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a bummer.
And I mean that because that's all you have. Basically all you have left.
Well, yeah, because you got to survive, because usually it's like between 80 and 90 degrees. And
depending on how fast your swim and your bike are, you could be like running in the heat of the day, or you could be running in the early evening, which sometimes isn't any better.
It was interesting this year at Kona. I definitely, having finally gotten to the second half of the run this year, I thought about it. The sun was going down, as I was coming back into town, and it went from being relatively, like, oh, the sun's going down, it's lovely, and then it was black, and you're in the blackness, and I've got my glow stick and stuff. But you realize, you think about the poor pro men and the pro women having to race that marathon in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
It's like brutal.
Oh, I mean, I've only watched it. That's the only way I've ever experienced Kona, but
Yeah.
I mean, just last year watching, because unfortunately they didn't give the females as much coverage as they did the males.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different conversation. But watching Lionel Sanders and Patrick Lange go back and forth not even really back and forth, but watching Lionel try to run away from him, and then watching Patrick come up. I just can't even imagine how hot it is. You're literally running on blacktop in the sun that is probably just cooking you. And they call it the energy lab, but I don't think I think it's sucking energy out of you. You're definitely not getting energy from it.
You know what? The energy lab isn't as scary as you think, believe it or not. Because I thought, oh God, you've heard about it for so many years, and that's going to be it. And it actually is kind of wonderful, because that's where you're like, oh God, here we go. I get to turn around now and go back to town.
Yeah.
And there are these long rollers that you actually get a nice rhythm into. And so for me now, granted, like I said, I was obviously way slower than the dude. So the sun was going down. It was actually kind of lovely. I was like, oh, I always in a race, once you get to the turnaround point and you start coming back, there's a certain power and strength knowing that you're headed back to the finish.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you picked Eagle Man as your first.
Yes.
For your 70.3. What did you pick for your first full?
So I whacked at Eagle Man a few years, and then, they took the Kona slots away, and I thought, okay, well, I guess I got to do this. And all right, the short version is, the first full was supposed to be Florida, and I was training for it.
Because you flew down, you had to...
Yeah, I flew down, I volunteered, and I was training for it. I was all jazzed up and excited, and I did the Diamond Man half as a training race. And I guess it was maybe 5 weeks out from Florida. So I raced the race. It's a local race. I had a lovely swim. First time I ever heard them say first female out of the water. I almost died. Now, granted, it's a small race, so whatever, but it still was great.
Yeah.
Had a good bike. Everything was great. And I start the run, and it was on a trail at Lum's Pond.
Uh-huh.
And I managed to trip on the run twice so spectacularly that I... unbeknownst to me, got a pneumothorax. So I popped my lung and found out a week later they had to put a chest tube in. So my training plans were derailed for that season, and I was really upset because I was very well trained.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten my run was really beautiful. So I ended up pushing everything forward a few months and went for Texas in the spring. So I had signed up for Ironman Texas in 2015, and I trained through the winter. I did all my bike training on the trainer and got really good at that. Really, really good at that. And then went to do Texas in 2015 and had probably the best race of my life at that race.
And that was your first full?
Yes, it was. And, I was hoping to qualify, but, nobody ever goes into their first Ironman saying that, because first of all, you sound like a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's ridiculous to think that you're going to be able to pull it off anyway. So I just picked one. I was like, oh, this will be good. I didn't know that it was the North American Championship,
Yes.
which actually strategically is helpful because they have more slots there, which I didn't find out until roll down, but that worked really well.
Okay.
But Texas is an incredible race. It's a warm race. At that point, it was a little later in the season. It's flat. The bike is flat and windy, which is just what I'm good at. Non-technical bike courses are what I look for. And the run was a loop run. So it was 3 8-mile loops, which I just seem to do well at mindless grinding efforts.
And I'm sure we'll get to talk about that a little bit. Yeah. But yeah.
And it was very hot, and I
so this played into basically everything if you could pick an ideal race, and have everything like, you know, the bike course this way and a looping run course that probably some people would just absolutely despise doing, you know, and then the heat and all. Like Texas was
perfect
for you.
Yes. And you know, and I have it worked out. It was kind of like miraculous. So, you know, I ended up having to go out with a friend who was my Sherpa. And she was incredible. So I got through the swim. I did okay. I didn't do that great. You know, I'm like an average swimmer. And then I got through the bike and I did okay. Not as fast as I wanted. And then I started running and it was very hot, but I was so excited to start running. When I came out of the tent in T2, I thought, sweet baby Jesus, we've got to run a marathon now. I can't even believe this. And it's important to just not think too hard about it. You just keep going. You're like, okay, we're just going to see what happens.
Well, and the other thing that I wanted to ask you and just pause real quick was you didn't get upset. You didn't get in your own head about your bike. Like you were like, okay, I didn't go as fast as I wanted to on the bike, but like I'm okay with that. And now we're going to the run, which is what I really, really love. And like maybe I can make it up there. Like, so you didn't go the other way and you're like, well, my day's done.
No, because it's your first Ironman. It's all an adventure. You have no idea what the hell's going to happen. So you're just like, well, okay, I don't know. Let's see. You don't know what your time's going to be. And I wasn't even smart enough to know whether I was really sucking or just sort of sucking. So you just keep going because you don't really have an option anyway.
I think that's really important, not just at the Ironman distance, but at every distance for somebody who's tackling it for the first time. You can have this idea in your head of how things are going to go, and you can have these times in your head and these paces and these speeds and these, you know, power numbers, whatever it is, but sometimes it's not gonna go that way. I mean, so I think that's just something that's really important to note on.
Oh yeah, you can't control it, especially something that's, you know, 12 hours long, or depending on, you know, how much of a stud you are. You can't control it. You got to just keep rolling. And things usually if you persevere, they do have the tendency to come around. If you're lucky enough. That run was in Texas was incredible. Once I started, I knew I was good. And actually, when I think about my next qualifying race, it was the same thing. Something about the run, you just turn your brain off and you put one foot in front of another, and that's where I feel most comfortable and calm. I'm like, it's gonna be good. We're all good here. Just keep being very specific about when you feed yourself and how you hydrate, and you hit every aid station. You just keep grinding away until you get to the end. And
you did.
Yes.
And do you remember what your place was in your age group? Do you remember your placement?
At Texas, I got fifth. And so,
okay.
So, you know, I thought, and usually having seen friends race Ironman, I thought, well, you know, I'll go to roll down the next day because that's what you're supposed to do. But I thought, no, I mean, come on.
Did you know how many slots?
Not a clue until the morning of. And I'm sitting there and they post the paper on the bathroom. And my Sherpa came with me. Best Sherpa ever. And so we're sitting at the breakfast. They do this breakfast buffet and you sit there, and there was this another woman that I knew very well, and she came up to me and she knew how I placed, and she said, "Oh my God, Susanne, they have the slots posted on the bathroom. Do you want to know?" And at the same time, my friend came back to the table and she goes, "I just saw how many slots there were for your age group." And I was like, "Don't tell me." And I definitely can have the tendency to be a drama queen, but I was all of a sudden I was like terrified. I'm like, "Don't tell me. I don't want to know. You're going to break my heart. I don't want to know." Yeah, and so.
But you would have had to have gone anyway, because Ironman, the podium goes 5 deep, right? So you still would have been on the podium.
There were 5 slots, and it actually rolled past me. One of the girls, I think it went 2 past me, so it went down to 7. I think somebody must have not taken one. There were a lot of slots.
5's a lot.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, that's why were I to do this again, I could see going to a championship race because I did not plan on that. I didn't realize they had so many. And people that I know are trying to qualify, I usually steer them towards a championship race because they're extra. So.
Yeah. Which is interesting that it would roll down because I feel like people would go and pick that race with that knowledge that there's more slots and like they're trying to qualify.
Exactly.
Unless maybe they already qualified, so then it would...
You know, it's a puzzle.
But why would you then... Like, if you already qualified, why would you then be racing another Ironman?
Because people are crazy.
Yeah, people are nuts.
They're crazy.
Especially in the Ironman sphere, so to speak. So you qualify at Texas, you come home, you're registered, scheduled, paid everything before you even leave Texas, because when you say yes, they're like, oh, okay, great, thank you so much, here's your lei. By the way, come over here, we need you.
When my husband and I would pack for Eagleman, or for even when I was packing for Texas, he would always look at me and go, Susanne, do you have the checkbook? I think in more recent years they did take credit cards, but you had to have a credit card and a checkbook to pay on the spot at Eagleman. So it was like always this ritual. He's like, do you have the check? Because one year I didn't have the check and I was flipping out and I thought I was going to miss a spot to 70.3 Worlds. And who was the incredible race director who did Eagleman for all those years? And I can't remember his name, and now he's not doing it anymore. Anyway, I didn't have my check and he's like, it's okay. It's okay. Calm down. We'll wait for you. We'll hold the slot for you. I was like, okay, thank you.
It's I want to say Vito.
Vito.
It's something like that. It's something with a V. Yes, I can picture him in my head.
Yeah.
He has like curly dark hair.
Yes, incredibly nice guy.
Yeah. And I think he was also somehow associated with the Columbia too,
yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Which do they even do that anymore?
No.
Which is sad because I never raced that race, but I always heard really good things about it.
I avoided that one like the plague because it was cold and hilly. The reverse of what I like. Yeah, so I was like, no, I won't do that one. Thank you.
So you come home, and this was June, somewhere in there, right? Okay. Yeah. And you qualify for Kona in that same year.
Yes.
So you're racing, you finish Texas in June.
Yeah.
And then you come home and it's like, okay, you have 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half rest. And then we're resuming training because in October of the same year, you're going to Kona.
Yes, it was a summer of really hard training. I spent the summer basically riding up and down Route 9 by myself, doing 5-hour rides. In the middle of the day, I would go to a park near me and do my long runs at 2 o'clock. And I would set a cooler up. The park had a 2.6 mile loop, and I would set a cooler up next to my car, knowing that Ironman has aid stations every mile, set up a cooler with ice, water, and Gatorade. And I would hit it every 2, 3, maybe 4 miles, depending on the weather.
Okay.
And that actually worked really well for me in terms of getting used to the heat. But man, once you get over to Kona.
And this was in the middle of the summer.
Oh yeah.
Right. So were you able to at least take the boys with you and they could hang out at the park and
then? Oh no, that's not the way it works. No. No, they had camp that summer, and I was lucky enough to have. There was a special needs camp that my son had gone to, and then my older son Will was in Y camp, so I tried to smush all my training in during the week.
Okay. So no long stuff on the weekends.
I do my long rides on the weekends. I mean, there is no doubt that sustaining an Ironman training schedule with a family and a spouse is just really hard.
They have to be in full support of it.
Absolutely. But even if they are, because my husband, who is incredible and has a great sense of humor and, supports my efforts 100%, it gets old. It just gets old.
Sure it does, yeah. Because
if you do a 5-hour ride, there's always time on the front end and the back end. You're leaving your family alone, and it's just very hard.
Even a 3-hour ride.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it does. I mean,
a 3-hour ride is essentially a 4.5-hour ride, right? Because there's stuff you have to drive. Well, and see, what I would do is I would end up driving places to ride that I knew were safe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Instead of like, I don't ride from my house because I would get slaughtered. So I would drive 25 minutes and then get set up, climb on my bike, do the ride, and then you'd have to drive home, and then you're trashed and you're home and your family's staring at you. So it's a tough life.
Yeah. And so going to Kona for the first time, who went with you?
I was really lucky. I had my husband,
Mm-hmm.
I had my father-in-law, and I had my oldest son, Will. And it was a lot. I did it differently the second time around. I think if you are doing that race, maybe it's just my brain, but you have to focus 100% on yourself. You don't have much to give to other people. So it was difficult for me the first time around, being concerned about my son and my father-in-law and making sure that they were okay and accommodating, maybe what they wanted to do, and just getting ready for that race. The whole week before is insane.
Yeah.
Plus you're trying to enjoy it. There's like pros flying everywhere. Your head's on a swivel, and meanwhile you're trying to get in and out of town. It's 1,000 million gajillion degrees.
Even still in October.
Oh Lord. It's just.
I mean, I've never been to Hawaii,
I think
so I don't know.
you need to get your butt out there and just go and like spectate it and volunteer.
That's what I really want to do.
For real.
I really want to go and spectate it. I really want to go because I want to do all the gimmicky things, but if I ever were to race it, I wouldn't want to do the gimmicky thing. Like, I want to swim out to the coffee boat and have coffee at the coffee boat, and I want to do all of the gimmicky things, so I want to do it 2 different times.
Yes. No, I would definitely, my husband and I were actually talking about going this year to just watch it. Because I would like to watch it. I'm no fun when I go.
Right.
The 2 times I've been, I'm completely invested in surviving that damn race. But it's magical because it's what you watched for all those years. It's exactly where you want to be, but then you're also completely terrified because you look around you and everybody looks like a stud, and you think, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die.
The closest thing that I can relate to you on that one is nationals.
Yeah,
I've raced nationals a few times, and it's just I think that you look at everyone else and you're like, oh man, that guy, but then I think at the same time, I think the thing that annoys me is that everybody is sizing everyone else up. So and it's super funny this year because everything that I have has pink on it. So the hubs in my wheels are pink, and my bar tape is pink, and my kit has pink on it, and everything's pink. And somebody said something to me. It's somebody I know, but he said something to me during the first race of the season. He's like, "What's with the pink?" And I feel like I explained this on the podcast once already, but I said, the people of this sport, especially the dudes, they take it way too serious. Yeah. So I put pink on my bike because people look at me when I'm walking around with my bike, and they're like, what's with the pink? What's your deal, dude? So it's who cares? Just go for it, But everybody is sizing everybody up, and I would not be surprised if that's how it is at Kona as well.
Think about times 10.
Yeah.
And the first time around, I let it get to me, and I freaked myself out. I had been reading about the course and had convinced myself all this stuff about the course that I was going to die out there. And to be honest, just even going out in the Queen K at noon, you think, how in the holy hell are you supposed to? And then the crosswinds are hysterical. I just, and having survived riding through southern Delaware on some windy days, you'd figure I'd have some kind of a concept, but the crosswinds there are really impressive. There are definitely points where you're descending, coming back into town where there's no way in hell I'm taking my hands and putting them in the aero bars. It's just not happening. And then you watch the pro men come around. They're going, I don't know, 50 in their bars downhill, and you think, oh my God. And I think it just sort of puts in perspective that you're not that cool. meaning myself, right? You need to lighten up and smile and just get through this. And so the second time around, I definitely took that lesson to just calm down, because my first experience at Kona was so hard. I got through the bike. So the swim was fine. I was okay. And then I got through the bike. And then I started running, and I was having stomach problems. Like, I felt nauseous, and I never get that. And I stopped eating at like mile 5. I couldn't take in Gatorade. I tried Coke. I even tried, this is disgusting. You know, I've heard stuff about people doing chicken soup. Now it's 97,000.
Right.
No matter what I took in, I thought I've never barfed in a race in my entire racing career. And I thought, I'm going to end up it's going to come out the top end or the bottom end.
Right.
And ran until mile 10. There's a corner where you can either turn down back towards the pier and the hotel and civilization, or you can go out into hell, into the hinterlands, back out on the Queen K to the energy lab. And I did the math in my head. It was exactly mile 10. I knew, I wasn't taking in any nutrition. I could take in water. That was about it. And I thought about it for probably 2 miles.
And so you went an additional 2.
Yeah.
You actually went out to 12.
No, probably starting at about like 5 miles. I was like, we have a big problem here.
Right, understood.
And I was running, and I was like, I can't even believe this is, and I think the nausea just blew me away. And the fact that usually, when you train and you race, you're like a little metronome with your nutrition. And the fact that I couldn't take in any more gels or any more Gatorade, it was like, I was like, I'm in big trouble here. So by mile 10, I had no sugar left in my...
You didn't have anything left.
Oh, it was terrible.
Yeah.
So people are yelling at me, come on, you could do it. And I was just like, you need to shut up. And I turned, I handed in my chip. I went to the med tent. They looked me over. I said, I'm fine. And mentally I was fine. And I was even fine with my choice. I was totally fine with it. My husband was scared to death. He thought something horrible had happened to me. And Kona is such a nightmare. You can't move. Like, I think it took him like 2.5 hours to get to me, because it's just, there's no communication. I couldn't get my phone. He thought I was like, dead on the pavement or something.
Because your tracker stopped, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
Everything's done.
Yeah. But
he doesn't know what's going on. He can't see you.
No. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a cluster.
Was that, even still, being the competitor that you are, I mean, was that a hard decision for you to make, or was it a safety decision that you knew you didn't want to do any serious damage, not consuming anything, or like, I don't know. Talk to me a little bit about that decision.
I think that it actually probably says some bad things about me. I thought about it a lot, and I came to the conclusion that one of the first things that I realized was, if I was going to have to walk that marathon, I was going to be absolutely furious. I refused. I ran the entire... I ran a 3:43 at Texas in 90 degrees. And I thought that I was going to be fine at Kona. And maybe had I gone in realizing that I was going to be walking, it would have been different. But if I'm walking by mile 10, and I don't mean like walking the aid stations, I mean walking, that the thought of walking 4 miles as someone who prides themselves on their run, I guess that means that I'm an egotistical princess. Yeah.
I don't know if I wouldn't say that. I think it was probably like a culmination of everything, like you were so depleted, first of all, that you knew that you weren't going to, it's not like you could even power walk it. Like, you probably would have been like slugging along.
No,
if
yeah. I mean, I
that.
probably had I slowed down. I could have maybe pulled my GI system back together again, and could have maybe started taking stuff in again. It's just I underestimated the race.
Mm-hmm.
I overtrained, and I think also I'm a little bit of a high-strung person, and I just between training and prepping for the race, I just fried myself mentally.
And I mean, it was your second
Right.
full
right.
Ironman distance race.
Also yeah.
Like, and I mean, it's not even like 1 year. It's almost 6-ish months, give or take. I mean,
it wouldn't be the way that I would recommend people to do it. And I think that, the other thing that I realized way later on, like maybe a year later, was that I had painted myself into a corner that I thought, oh, I want to qualify for Kona. This is what I want to do. And then when you realize what that means, that you have to train your ass off for one race, qualify, which is a miracle, and then keep training and do the same distance again, not necessarily to qualify, but you just have to survive. But the conditions are so hard that and then do it in this compressed time period. It's kind of horrible.
Now, is there, I don't know, and you might not know the answer to this, you might, but is there a cutoff? Like, so if you race at X date and you qualify for Kona, you're actually qualifying for the following year?
Yeah, it's somewhere in August. It's like late August.
Okay.
Like Wisconsin might be the last. I'm guessing.
Right.
It's right around now.
Okay. So anything after right now. So Arizona, Florida, those ones that happen in like October and November, you're qualifying for the following year.
And classically, a lot of people will also select races around the time of Kona, presuming that all the badasses have gone to Kona, so that it's easier to qualify. Like, there's a lot, all the strategies that people use.
Because that's what it is. It's
Yeah.
it's a chess game. Like, racing is a chess game. I just talked to my coach about it the other day because you never know who's going to show up and what kind of day they're going to have.
Totally.
Like, someone could have. You said it yourself. Texas was
Amazing.
the race of your life.
Yeah.
Like, so who knows what could happen? Somebody else could show up and have the race of their life, and you have like a good race, but not a great like super race, and they're going and you're not. I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is, a chess game. I don't think there's any shame in like looking at it that way and trying to figure out like, okay, well, I'm going to do Arizona because I know that it's late in the season. It's close to Kona. Nobody's going to be, coming off of Kona and going. I mean, unless you're Lionel Sanders, I'm pretty sure that's what he's doing. But that guy's something else. But yeah, I think, it just seems like it's such a compressed time period to do that distance and just
I think
so close together. And
yeah, it's the difficulty that I have is I tend to like hot races, and the only hot races are going to be early summer type thing or midsummer. In the case of Santa Rosa, so Ironman's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
I want to talk about your second chance and your quest for Kona, and I want to not only talk about what was different because somebody was, following you around, but I want to know how your training was also different because you had a different coach and there were a lot of things that were going on. So I want to hear, what the second chance was like and how you went into it.
So I guess I took a year, and I think I raced Cozumel the year in between. A half, no big deal. I was like, oh, that'll be fun. And I had qualified for Worlds at Cozumel, and man, that's a hot race. And so there was this coach that I had researched. His name's Jeff Devlin. He's based out of Westchester, and he's an incredible veteran. He raced as a pro in the mid 90s, I think, and I think his top placement was 3rd at Kona overall. And he's just got an incredible brain and knowledge for the sport and numbers, but then also one of his greatest strengths is just to tell me to calm the down because I have a tendency to go at things too hard, Anyway, I had signed up with him, hoping to race 70.3 Worlds that year. And I guess it was January, and I'm bopping along, thinking, oh, this will be fun. I'll train for a half. It'll be fun. And then a friend of mine online says, hey, look, there's this crazy thing called Quest for Kona. Why don't you apply? So it's January. There's nothing fun to do, and I had to put together like this little video and fill out the application, and I sent it in. And then, I think it was like 3-4 weeks later, I'm Skyping with this crazy guy whose name's Evan Hathaway, who he came up with the idea for the show. He's sort of like a magical one-man band. He came up with the concept of Quest for Kona and found us all and came out to each of our houses and interviewed us and got all of our individual stories. And basically, at the end of it, we all came out of it with 30-minute television shows telling each of our stories. And it's very scary to give your life over to someone and have no idea what they're going to come up with. And it's incredibly scary to have this. Eben came into my house and did a homestay for 3 days and would come at like 6 a.m. and stay until like 8, 9 at night. And I've got Will, my oldest, Quinn, my youngest, my husband, Sean. And, I'm making lunches and there's a guy with a giant microphone and my camera in my face.
Mm-hmm.
And the hysterical part. So then there's Quinn, who's just like, who, because of his autism, there's not really any way to explain to him why there's a strange man in the house and that he's going to comprehend, right?
Right.
The whole thing was wild, and interestingly enough, Quinn loved Eben, and Eben never talked to him. So he'd just walk around and follow me with a camera and never talk. There was no talking. It was just documenting. So you're supposed to pretend like the camera's not there, and Quinn's like staring into the camera, like waving at the camera, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what to say. I can't shut him down. This is how he rolls.
Yeah, there's no like.
But it was a pretty interesting way to train for an Ironman, and everything in my life happened to be sort of collapsing at that point, because Quinn ended up being thrown out of the school that he was in around the beginning of May. So I ended up having Quinn home with me from May until the end of July. So I was training in my house 100%, which I already was. I was doing my runs around my block, which is about a quarter mile. I actually rolled it with, those magic things that the 5K guys use to measure a course.
You weren't going to trust your Garmin?
No, I'm crazy, dude. I measured it. And so I think the longest, I did a 14-mile run around my block one time, but I did a 10-mile run during that training cycle. It was brutal.
Was that the longest you ran?
No, I mean, 10 miles around the block, but then I would sneak out on weekends and do like 18.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, whoa.
No.
I mean, I've heard of people not running the full distance before
like
the
that.
race and stuff,
No.
but like, I was like, wow, 10 miles.
But what's interesting is the coach that I used that time, he was more about time and let go of the miles. And I had heard of that theory, but it was a big deal for me to like. Usually it's like, if you say I need to do 10 miles, I'll run as fast as I can until it's done.
Right.
But if you tell me I have to run 2 hours and keep my heart rate at X, it's a different story.
A whole different. Yeah.
And that was the training theory that Devlin was using, which was very interesting. It was very heart rate based and very aerobic, and was like, you need to just calm everything down. He would punch me in the face with my bike intervals more, but my runs were very aerobic.
Well, and the other theory with that is as well that if you're going for time, say you're going for time and heart rate, right, and you're very well rested and you're feeling great, you have a great day, right? Or let's say, because for people like you and I, we're still going to look at the data anyway. We're still going to see how many miles, and we're still going to compare like one day to the next. But at least if you're having a really shitty day and you don't feel good and you just have to run for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, instead of, hey, you have to go run 7 miles, like, it's a little bit easier to wrap your head around running for an hour when you feel like crap rather than,
I am so
oh my God,
obsessed
I have
with pace.
to go.
I can't let pace go. I
know.
just can't do it. It's hard.
It is. I'm obsessed with power.
Yes, that too.
That's the one that like I'm super, super obsessed with.
What meter are you using?
I use the stages.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, the stages, just the single arm. But it's made. I mean, the difference that it's made in my training since I put it on is just like insane.
How long have you been training with it?
2, maybe 3 years now.
Yeah.
That and then I got a kicker.
Okay.
I because I was like, you know what? If I'm going to ride, I was spending so much time inside and riding so much inside that I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Like I'm just gonna get one of these. Why would I not? So.
Do you need me to tell Mom?
Why don't you go grab one?
No.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
We're okay. Very OCD. Grab a towel. You're okay.
I don't want to.
Okay. Why don't you go find your bathing suit and swim?
No.
All right. Watch this completely go off the rails. We'll see. All right. Ignore him. All he's going to do is pace. This is what you get.
Okay.
Ignore him.
So yes, I did. I knew that when I was going to spend that much time inside, I may as well just.
Can I swim?
Sure, go swim.
Can I swim?
Go
Can I
find.
swim?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Are you listening?
Okay. Where's my mate? Where's my mate?
Go in your bedroom. It's
What?
in a pile
What?
of clothes.
Oh, 5 goes?
Yep.
5 goes?
Yep.
Oh.
Sorry.
So I did it. I bought the kicker,
Yeah.
and I love it. I love it.
They're brutal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. So I use Zwift, like we
Yeah.
were saying, and I used the kicker. And today I rode the UCI World Championship course that's currently on Zwift.
Yeah.
I think I may have averaged 13 miles an hour for a 2-hour ride. There's 1,600 feet, I think. There's one climb.
Yeah.
But it's 1,600 feet of elevation gain in one climb, and that's it. And
I
then
haven't been on in a year, so they
Oh,
probably
it's-
have changed all the courses. But when I tell you that I had those courses freaking memorized last year, because I did 105 miles last year. I did like a 5-hour and I don't know what the hell it was, but yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. So I'm not and I was thinking of this today. I love the whichever one has the volcano, like the Zwift volcano route.
Yeah.
But I love that map, I guess is what you could call it, because there's so many different options. Like if you want to go do a climb, you can go do a climb, but then you can come down and like do some flat. Like there's a ton of different options. With the UCI course, it's just like, here's the UCI course, and guess what? It's all climbing, no matter which way you go.
Well, Devlin would do this thing where he would actually log his bike intervals. You can upload them to Zwift.
Okay.
Have you done that?
No, I haven't.
Like it's a computer program, and he would design them, and then he would upload them to Zwift, and it would say, hold X watts for 3 minutes. Hold X watts for 30 seconds. Hold X watts. It was amazing, and it would yell at you, and then it would tell you, it would do your cadence and your wattage. I love the numbers. I mean, if you're trapped on the bike.
I know. But I feel like Zwift, because did you have Zwift for your first?
No.
When you did Texas? Right, so it was
Can
probably...
you believe that? Like, I was looking at, like, a Garmin. Like a 50, what is it, a 501 or what? Like, I forget what the heck it is. You know, I'm looking at a tiny little Garmin screen for 5 hours. I would watch movies, but I actually don't do so hot watching movies. My wattage goes down, so I'll just listen to music and, you know. Yeah,
I put music. I have a speaker and I put music on real loud, and then I have I watch the screen.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's so much fun because you can see, and it's like you can totally tell when people are like cheating.
Yes.
So I was doing this giant climb, right, and there's somebody that's running next to me, and they're running faster than I'm, climbing the hill on my bike, and I'm like, okay, well that's cool. I mean, I can see that you're doing a 7-minute pace, but like, is your home treadmill at 12% right now? Because I'm sure it's probably not. Because if you can run 7-minute miles at a 12% grade, like,
have you done any of the time trials? Because that's fun too. Like I would get
No.
bored on a Tuesday night and then they'd have like a time trial and it's
I haven't.
so it's just 10 minutes and you just go as hard as you can for 10 minutes. It's awesome.
I haven't. I want to do a real time trial.
Oh my gosh, you have
I
to.
want to do like
so
a
much
real
fun.
time trial. Like that's it. Just
Yeah.
like a 10-mile bike. Like,
Hard.
yeah.
I've done a few. They're a hell of a lot of fun. When I'm bike fit, I'm actually pretty good. And I will only do flat ones. There's some down in Annapolis, and there used to be one up in Delaware. It's hard. It's harder than you would think.
Oh no, I'm sure it's very, very hard.
Yeah.
But I want to do one just for fun and
Totally.
see like what my numbers would be.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would treat it any different than like a 10-mile sprint try because I don't care what happens on the run, really. Like for a sprint.
Yeah.
Like I go for it on the bike, and I think that I would still just go for it in a regular time trial.
Yeah, no, it's. I actually don't know that I know how to go to that level of hardness on the bike. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not true. I do remember I used to have to do these horrible 10-minute power intervals. Where
Okay.
you go, like, you want to get to barf level by the end of your 10 minutes.
Right.
Where you're literally crying. You're like, I can't do it
like an FTP test.
more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But except imagine doing that, but you're not on the trainer and you can't fall over. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's a little different.
Yes, I can see how that would be different. So you do all of your training. You have this crazy man following you around with a camera and a big microphone. And now you're going back to Kona for the second time. How do you feel going into Kona time number 2 versus time number 1?
Well, just backing up for just tiny.
Sure,
so,
absolutely.
So I did the race that they had selected me to try and qualify at was Santa Rosa, and that's in California. It's in wine country. It's incredibly beautiful. There were 2 other people from the show racing there, so I had only had contact with the people from the show for like 3 days. And then we show up in Santa Rosa. I've got a different Sherpa this time, my friend Karen. And I really have to start understanding what it's like to be followed during a race by a motorcycle. And that was a little scary. But it was sort of like an amazing convergence of everything just magically worked out. And my camera guy was really nice. And the morning of the race, I hitched a ride with the camera crew to the beginning of the swim star, which was 30 minutes away. And there's like 4 guys eating microwave burritos in the car, like talking about stuff. And, you know, I'm sitting on piles of cameras in the back of this van. It was very weird.
Is it a point-to-point swim?
It is a lake swim. So it's 2 loops.
Okay. But swim start is not...
Oh, it's totally weird. It's like 30 minutes away, and then you ride into town, and then you run through town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you swim and bike are
Yeah.
in one spot, and then the ride is a point-to-point.
Yes.
Okay.
But the race was great. I swam like a freak, which is I never do, and it made me so happy. I had a really lovely swim, and I had an okay bike, and then I had a spectacular run. But the thing about California is it was 80 degrees, but there was no humidity. It was like running in October. It was incredible. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. It was wonderful. So I'm, doing this 3-loop bike course, and they've got a guy on a moped in front of me with the cameraman sitting backwards shooting me, and the girl who I now know, she's a really nice girl named Rochelle, who ended up winning my age group. She got first, I got second. She's like looking over at me. There's a camera guy in front of me. The dust, so it was like a dirt path. The dust is kicking up at us. She can't breathe. She's like, who is this idiot with the camera person? And I was like, I'm really sorry. I'm like, we're running along, at like 8s. I'm like, I'm really sorry about the camera. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's for a TV show. It was an incredible race, and I had a signature great run, and ended up going to Kona and spent I don't know, I guess it was like 8. No, it wasn't even. My God, it was August. So, 8 weeks. Holding my fitness for Kona, and having my coach tell me, listen to me, you are going to be, knowing that my goal was to complete the race.
Right.
That was the only goal.
And I want to know how, and I'm not asking you this,
Yeah.
I'm just just a point, but I want to know how many people go there with that goal. I feel like,
Good question.
I feel like there's, I would say
Nobody?
99%. Oh no, I'm going way high.
You think so?
Yes. I mean, I know people want to do well, but I think that you have to know going into that race that in order to place in your age group, I mean, you better be
There's
an absolute rock star.
I didn't realize that the first time around because I have a tremendous ego. I mean, I moderate it somewhat, but I have a tremendous ego. But then the second time around, I knew. I was like, you're just a drop in the bucket, girl. You're nothing special. You need to just survive. And there are also a lot of charity people that do Kona, and it's interesting because what I found at the swim start, I don't know anyone. So I'm standing there. There's helicopters overhead. They've got, the guys with the bongos, like singing Hawaiian songs, like doing all kinds of stuff, and you're terrified. And you're trying, usually I can make friends with anyone, anywhere.
Yeah.
And at my first Kona, trying to talk to people, they looked at me like I had horns coming out of my head. I'm like trying to talk to people, and they're like, who are you? Go away. The only people that would talk to me were the charity people, and they were so excited to be there.
Of course
and
they
I was
were.
like, can you believe we're in Kona? And everybody's like, all of the cool people would look at me like, you're so lame. What's your problem? This is like a huge race. I'm focusing. And I was
Yeah.
like, we're in Kona. Look at it. Like, oh my God. Like, look at all the pros, all excited. The only people that were excited and genuinely I could talk to were the charity slot people, which is an interesting observation. And so the second time around, I did know a few people, my friend Adam, who was doing the race through the show as well. And so I got to hang with him and some other people. But I just had a lot better perspective the second time around. It was like weird combination of knowing that you're not the stud you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And in a strange way, you are the stud you think you are.
Right,
so,
right.
Kind of weird. Yeah. So, yeah. And the second race was much more chill. I had a lovely swim. I swam under a 110, which blew my mind. And I went very easy on the bike and still had problems coming off the bike. Was a little scared. My stomach was a little weird like the first 4 miles, but just told myself to calm down because no matter what, I was going to walk it. I mean, if I had to walk the whole freaking thing, I was going to walk it. But once I settled in, it was fine. And I think I was running like, around 9-minute pace. It would be anywhere from like 8:40 to 9:15, depending. And then you would start feeling your stomach get a little weird, and you would just slow down. And then it would get better again, and you just kept on going. And you go aid station to aid station every mile. And it was okay.
What flipped that switch, do you think?
In my head?
Between the first time you went and you were like, there's no chance I'm going to walk this. But then now the second time.
Well, I was humbled. I mean, I knew that I wasn't that cool. You're just not that cool.
Mm-hmm.
Get over yourself. And the fact that I was incredibly lucky enough to pull this off a second time, I wasn't going to blow it. Because God knows it's hard enough on my family and on my own body to get through this training. I didn't know whether it was going to happen a third time. You don't have another chance. You better do it now.
Right.
So... I think I had things better in perspective. There's going to be a splash here in a minute. That's
okay. I hope it's a big one.
Yeah.
I hope it's a huge cannonball.
It could take a while. Sometimes he stands here for a while, so we'll see. It was great. It was great the second time around. And now it's one of the things that's really hard is my huge dream which I've been looking at for so many years. And despite whatever was going on in my life, challenges with my children, I had this thing that was separate and safe and that I could always chase and use to make myself feel like I had value. And now Kona I had slayed that dragon, and which is good, but it's definitely a testament to Christmas Eve is a lot better than Christmas sometimes. Reaching for something is almost better than actually getting to the finish line a lot of times. So, and I'm still processing that, and I'm trying some new things, and I'm enjoying them, and so that's good. Your whole life shouldn't be about one single goal, but it is hard when a giant goal that you've had has been accomplished, which is a very weird thing to realize.
So, and you said at the beginning of the podcast that you did not race a triathlon for the first time this season in like 9 years or something.
Yes.
Did you miss it? Or coming off of 4 Ironmans in the course of like
3 years?
Yeah, that's what I yeah. Like
it was
were you just completely burned?
I think that's definitely part of it. I think I fried myself. I also had an incredible convergence of hard stuff going on in my life. I had to deal with some things that were just incredibly hard. Psychiatric issues with my son that make other things seem just not important. So now I train, it could definitely come back to me. My desire to run fast more than anything. But I'm getting old. I'm 46. I'm getting old, and I don't have the capacity to go halfway with anything. I go too hard, and then I get myself all jacked up. I can get myself jacked up over a 5K. It's absurd. Like, absurd. So I need to just calm down. So, and also just enjoy what you've accomplished. That's, people just keep chasing the next thing. Like, how about, like, hey, man, look what you pulled off.
Yeah.
So.
But you did dabble in something a little bit new, right?
It's been interesting. So yeah, I tried this.
I gotta talk
stop.
about it because I didn't even know.
Well, there's a lot.
You were kind of low key about it, but you still posted a couple things about it. So
it's fascinating because apparently I can't do something if there's not a competition component involved. Like, why would you just try something if you can't compete? It's ridiculous. I definitely have a personality flaw like that. So I started weightlifting because I decided as a 46-year-old woman that now would be the time, if I want to try something new, to try and change my appearance and change my body and learn a new sport. I love learning about new sports. And to be honest, I've done triathlon for enough years. I feel like I know so much. There's not a ton left to learn, which is probably not true. But so I've been trying lifting, and it's been enjoyable. And I even so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to try a competition. Well, I've learned quite a bit about what it's like to prep for a competition and all the different divisions in bodybuilding, certainly the difference between natural and not natural. And I made it through. I found out that I was training for the wrong division. And I found out, oh my God, how hard it is to do a competition prep. I made it through 12 weeks. And they took my carbs away, and I was on my knees. I was like, I can't do this. So I'm still lifting. I have a coach. I'm trying to build muscle mass a little bit and possibly compete in a division called figure, but I don't know that I'll ever get that big enough, and I don't really even care. I don't even know if I could survive. Prep is insane.
Yeah. I follow an IFBB
God.
pro female, and she just got back.
Nationals was today, wasn't it?
No, she did Worlds. I think it was in Vegas.
Okay, there was something.
Because I thought I saw her post something about how she was like top 10 in the world.
Or it was like yesterday or today or something that I know. Yeah,
And she was and she got like sick, and I'm not sure if it was something between like the prep and the lack of food that she was having, but
Well,
I've watched people go through that, and it's like,
yeah, I don't know. I haven't made a decision about whether it's something that I want to pursue, but I am quite enjoying what I'm learning about feeding myself, what I'm learning about making muscle. That's really cool. And I like the way I look. So, at 46, it's nice to do that.
yeah.
And I just like learning new stuff. So, yeah, there's a look to endurance athletes, especially females, that's sort of, after a while, it's like you're a giant walking stick with no muscle, and I want to try and counteract that. So, yeah.
That's fun. No, I mean you're trying to go for something new, right?
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, I'm not quite sure where to go from here. People have made comments about, coaching, and I'm like, I would kill someone if I tried to coach them. I would absolutely kill them. I would like to teach master swimming. Not that I'm that smart in swimming, but I'm very enthusiastic.
Right. When they have a course, right? Do they have it like a training? Yeah,
I'm sure I could. I mean, honestly, it's a question of, my life is so compromised. I don't have as much freedom as most women my age, so that's a challenge. But I feel really passionate. Nothing crushes my soul than seeing someone swim badly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be a cool thing. But I am not quite sure where to go next. I keep sort of poking around and looking.
Are you gonna come back? You gonna come race again?
I don't see how I couldn't.
Right.
I don't know that I'll go up to the level that I was at in terms of distance.
Right.
I could see myself going up to the same intensity, but for a shorter distance would be fun. Like, I've never done nationals. That would be fun.
It is. It's a ton of fun. I mean, I really enjoy it. To obviously take away the aspect of like everybody's measuring against everybody else, but I think that just comes along with the sport.
Yeah.
But it's just so fun. Like, and I think it's the second biggest stage that you could be on for like sprint and Olympic.
Where's it next year?
Cleveland.
Okay.
It's not a bad. I shouldn't say it's not a bad drive. It's not a far drive. It's a boring drive.
Yeah.
Because you're on the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Oh, trust me.
And then you're on, then you get on the Ohio Turnpike.
Yeah.
So you're on the same stretch of road for probably a couple hundred miles.
I've done the Philly to Bloomington, Indiana drive many, many times. That's where I went to school.
Okay.
So, yeah, I could like do long drives with my eyes closed, but that would be I would like that. I would like that. I would like to enjoy doing a sprint and rip it out.
I was going to say, I feel like like you can definitely enjoy doing a sprint, but there's also that very extremely painful part of doing a sprint.
Well, I decided this winter, I was like, oh, you know what, I'm going to try and do 5Ks. And I had a really good friend of mine training me for 5Ks. And I blew myself up over it. I get so upset over speed work and tempo runs. And then I think we got up to my first race, and I did my first race, and I actually overshot my goal, but I had myself so freaked out before the race. There's a, do you know the guy that Delmo uses for sports psychology?
Yeah.
I went to see, I think his name's Mitch Green.
Uh-huh.
And like the poor guy, I just handed him all these neuroses. He was like, okay. He said something to me that kind of stuck with me. He goes, you don't have to go 100% to win. He's like, 90%. 90%'s good. He's like, because if you think about it, if you go 100%, you're going to end up on the floor barfing. But 90%, you still have a brain in your head, and you know what I mean? You're making choices. So,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I need a good sports psychologist, I think.
Don't we all sometimes,
Yeah,
though?
definitely.
Don't we all? So, is there anything else, any parting thoughts that you would like to share? Or I can hit you with my question that I hit everybody with at the end.
What if I don't like the question? Do I go back to the other one?
Yeah.
Okay,
you can go back
I want
to
to hear what's your question?
No, the the whole premise of and I set it up. The whole premise of the podcast is it's the Do It For Yourself podcast.
Yeah.
So everyone is in one way, shape, or form doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
And my hope is that someone who is sitting on the sidelines or has not taken that leap, has not taken that first step, if they find this podcast, one of the stories will get them to at least take the first step, right? So if given the opportunity, what would you say to that person who is still standing on the sideline, hasn't taken that first step? They've downloaded the 5K plan, the Couch to 5K, but they haven't started it yet because they don't have the right sneakers, or it's too hot, or you know what I mean? Doesn't necessarily have to be a running goal.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Well,
They haven't started for one reason or another.
I do feel super duper extra strongly. I can say with 100% confidence, I've listened to some of your podcasts and the other people that you've had on your show. A lot of them have a pedigree of sports background. And from my experience, I want to make it very clear that there is zero. If you have no sports background and you want to try something, or, geez, I don't know, it could be anything. Just because you don't have a background in it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try it. And they're also, just because you don't have a background in something doesn't mean that at whatever age that you're at, middle age, old age, that you couldn't be wildly successful. So, coming from someone who was a 163-pound smoker in art school, with no running background, no swimming background, and to eventually get to Kona, it is possible.
No, it's fine.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I'm really sorry.
No, I was hoping that I could see the cannonball.
Okay, so then this is the thing. Quinn Vanzijl, what are you doing? See the face? He's ridiculous. It takes a long time for him to get in the water. It's a thing. It's part of the ritual. And now we're hosed. Because he's going to be loud now. I'm sorry.
No. You're fine.
Everyone can do it. You can do it. There's no reason to not try. Looking stupid's not an excuse. Being fat's not an excuse. Being too hot is an excuse. Never having done it before. None of that. No, I'm sorry. Try it. Because what else do you have to lose? Okay. Why would you sit watching Netflix when you could actually try something new? Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
It did.
Yeah. Even if you're, there couldn't be someone coming from a more non-triathlon background than me. And don't think that there isn't the chance that you could be Rocky.
Right.
Or the Black Stallion. So
yeah.
I guess, that would be what I would say.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Oh, it was
so
wonderful.
Much. It was. I told you, it's not as scary as, right?
It is. I was a little intimidated, but it's fascinating to get the chance to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
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 So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
All
Sorry
right.
about the kid.
No. How did that hit you? Just take a minute to kind of reflect on that interview with Susanne and take it all in and really just take a minute to enjoy and think about how that interview made you feel. I absolutely loved it. I had so much fun sitting down with Susanne, getting a chance to catch up with her, and having her share the journey of qualifying for Kona twice, from her home, and her experience with the Quest for Kona TV show and kind of everything surrounding that as well. So if you would like, please do me a favor and let me know how that interview hit you and how that made you feel. I would like to say just once again, thank you to Susanne for having me down to her beautiful home, and opening up not only her home, but her story and sharing that with myself and with you, the listeners here on the Do It For Yourself podcast. If you are interested in supporting my work, one of the ways that you can support me is by sharing this podcast, this interview, with a friend who you think would enjoy listening to this interview. That would help me greatly, and I would really appreciate having some new like-minded individuals to share this experience with. Another way that you can help me on this show is to go on iTunes and leave me a little bit of a review. Click off on the stars that you feel as though this show deserves, and even possibly share some thoughts with me on how this show is going. And the last way that you can support this show is through my Patreon account. The link is here in the show notes, and it will also be along with the post that goes out on Instagram and on Facebook. So if you would like to support my work financially, you can always go on to the Patreon account. You can do a monthly donation, or you can do a one-time donation to help support this show and make it better. So I thank you guys so much for tuning in this week, and I look forward to talking with you again next week.